Hello, and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Jo Wheatley, and my friend and co host, Zoe Hawkins.
Hello, everybody. Great to be back for another episode. And this week we are talking about how to overcome setbacks in your coaching business. And the reason we're bringing this to you today is because we know many of you are either thinking of setting up your own coaching business or you are already running your own coaching businesses. And setbacks are really something that is just part of everyday life when you're running your own business. So that's what we're going to talk to you about today.
Yeah, and we're going to bring you examples from our own experience, examples that people share in our Coaching Crowd Facebook group, and also in our membership, the Coaching Crowd Business Lounge. It's the reality of having a business, a thing, and life even, that things don't always go to plan. So having some ideas about how you will overcome those setbacks so that you can achieve your goals, we think is really important. So today we're going to start by going through some examples.
Yeah, and I think the first one that comes to mind is obviously what if I have no clients coming through or I'm not booking any chemistry calls? And this is something we do hear from people in our Business Lounge membership where they may be going through a dry spell, or perhaps they've just started out and they aren't getting the results that they are looking for. And, we've been in that situation ourselves, haven't we, Jo, when, the business pipeline where we can see how much work we've got ahead of us feels a little bit scarce, and that can be a really unsettling time. So so what would you say to somebody who is going through that particular scenario, Jo?
Be patient to start with. Obviously, it can impact your confidence. So a good place to look at are your own underlying beliefs about yourself as a coach and you having a coaching business. It's about being tenacious, taking a look at your messaging. Is your messaging aligning to your ideal client, or is there perhaps some mixed messaging? What about the consistency in terms of how you're talking about your business, where you're talking about your business? What's your audience size? It's really important to take time in the early days of your coaching business to build your audience or build your network, however you describe that, because obviously there will be a percentage of people that come through to join you as clients, but that percentage will be a small percentage of your overall audience size.
I think it also takes a lot for somebody to book a chemistry call with a coach, and to take action. So I think it's about looking at your business and looking at the points of entry where people can make contact with you and the resources that you offer. And actually, booking the chemistry call is often the last step. So taking a look at the flow of where clients find you, how they enter your world. Do they go from literally nothing to booking a chemistry call? Because that's probably unlikely to happen for the majority of people. When I reflect on myself as a coachee and times when I've wanted to work as a coach, it took me a long time to be able to move from being somebody who thought that, actually, I'd quite like to invest in this, to actually pressing the button and doing something about it. So where it's been helpful for me has been downloading a free resource or listening to an audio or something else that helps to build that know, like, and trust factor so that you feel more connected to the person that you want to work with. So I would look at where are the entry points for that client to be able to join you inside your world.
Yeah, great points. And even simple things like, do you have a calendar link, which means that it's easy for people to be able to book an appointment with you without having to contact you direct and to arrange it. That works for some people, maybe not so much for others, but essentially it's about try something else, because you're learning, you're experimenting in your business. And actually, even to this day, we're 12 years in now, we are experimenting every day in our business with the services that we offer, how we enable people to contact with us, how we support the communities that we have created, and we always approach it with a learner mindset. So I think staying in that learner mindset will resource you to be able to overcome the setback. You will, it's likely that you will have peaks and troughs in your coaching business, particularly when you're starting out, but also maybe when you pivot at times in your coaching business as well. And accepting that is a normal part of running a business can also help you when you find yourself in that situation. So making sure that you have a community of people that can support you when you're having those little moments of self-doubt can also be really helpful, and they'll share their ideas and thoughts and give you that boost of morale that you need.
I think what we're saying is don't go down the rabbit hole of thinking you're not good enough, because those moments do often trigger our own personal insecurities. And so when you go down that rabbit hole of I'm not good enough, the energy you're going to be bringing to your sales activities or your marketing activities is going to, it's going to come through in the way that you talk about your work and the way that you post. So really important to just stay focused, as you've said there, Jo, on the fact that you're learning and you're growing and you're trying different things, because I think the energy that you bring to your business is a huge part of whether clients choose to join you or not, because I think you can pick up on that stuff.
And a lot of coaches in their coaching businesses are, sole traders, solopreneurs, and it can be a very lonely place when things aren't going to plan. You might have your strategy, but you might not be seeing the results that you want at the pace at which you hoped or expected to see them. And we see in the Coaching Crowd Business Lounge where people come in and do a video and say, oh, I'm having a wobble this week. This has happened, that's happened, it hasn't gone to plan, and people coming in and supporting them. And we had a recent example of somebody that was launching a group program, the first time that they've ever launched a group program, and they didn't get the numbers that they want. And they were able to move from being in a position of, what have I done wrong? Am I failing? Should I be looking for another to go back into the corporate space or not, into a place of actually I'm going to offer this and run this as a beta program, as a pilot group, and in return for that pro bono investment, I am looking for people to give me testimonials or quotes on the experience that they've had. And they felt good about that felt aligned to them, and they had a new energy with which they could approach that group program, and they will take the learning from that and then they will invest that into the decisions that they make about the group programs going forwards.
I think it's really important as you're going through these setbacks to recognize and normalize them. Mm-hmm. So I think we can often look to coaches and think, oh, they look like they've been an overnight success, or they look like they're getting like constant client bookings all the time. And actually, it's really normal to launch products, programs, and for people to not buy. It's absolutely normal to not have your messaging bang on first time. Like I remember launching my first group program where I sold 2 spots. And actually, I was really proud of selling those 2 spots. But in my mind, I thought, oh, is that enough? Is that successful? Like, should I have sold more? So it's our own kind of mental journey that can often be the piece that disrupts us.
And then we're thinking about, what about when you're getting chemistry calls, and you might have 10 chemistry calls a week, 6 chemistry calls a week, however many, but you're not converting them. That can feel like you're experiencing a setback. So what would you say in that situation?
I think first is keep the faith. Chemistry calls are a skill, I think, that you learn as a coach. So if you aren't converting, also think about practice, and don't go down the scarcity route of, oh God, I've messed up the only chemistry conversation I'm ever going to get. Keep it in perspective. So I think that's important. The second thing is, I think there's some really practical things that you can do. So some people are put off by finding out the price for the first time on the chemistry call. Now, I know there is conflicting advice about whether you do this or not, but I'm a big subscriber of pricing transparency when it comes to people who are investing. I think it's about, for me anyway, like I trust my clients to be able to judge the value of what they're getting. And it's important then that I communicate the value through my messaging of what they're going to experience when they work with me. I think for somebody to discover the price first time after they've built up the courage to have a chemistry call and get on that call with you, to find that either they can't afford it, or they're not ready to invest that amount of money, or it might come as a surprise to them, or maybe it's too cheap and they're going off to look for, a coach which represents more value for them. So pricing transparency, I think, can really help to overcome that hurdle. And also when it comes to pricing, to be able to confidently and congruently hold that conversation in the chemistry conversation. Often we know that coaches will back off from having pricing conversation, or the energy shifts to a bit more of an awkward, I don't know, I don't feel very comfortable about this. Like practicing being able to have those conversations and backing yourself with the pricing that you set, I think is really, really important for being able to convert clients.
Having a semi-structure for the conversation can help as well, so that you ensure that you cover the things that are important to cover. It's about how you build the relationship with the client. So there's the energy. And then there's the bit afterwards, which is, are you asking for feedback? Do you know that the reason why the client has decided not to go ahead with the coaching after the chemistry conversation? So is it a case that out of the 10 chemistry calls you're having a week, actually they're all just coming to kind of find out a bit more about what coaching is, rather than actually engage with the coach? That will give you information about the messaging that you give to your clients about when to book in for a chemistry call, so that they can kind of deselect if they're not at that point of getting ready to engage with a coach. It might be about pricing. It might be that they're not sure if the program is the right fit for them, and then that will point you to your messaging. So following up and asking for feedback is really important. I think if you have the nerves about how did that go, a lot of coaches won't follow up for that fear of rejection. If that's something that you notice is coming up for you, then that's something that would be worth engaging with your own coach with, in order to resolve that.
I think also you talked there about follow-up. So when you're on a chemistry conversation, personally, I can judge the energy. Like if the client is enthusiastic and excited and they give you all the right signals about them wanting to work with you, and then you don't hear from them, I assume they want to work with me. So I'm going to follow up with them and be like, really enjoyed the time that we had on the call together, felt that we would be a great fit. If you have any further questions, let me know. Here's the link to sign up, so do follow up. Don't assume that just because you don't hear from a client that they've rejected you and found somebody better. They might be really busy. They might need you to prompt them. It may be that they plan to get around to it and they just haven't managed to get to it, and then life has moved on and they've forgotten, or their problem's gone away. And in which case, that's a fantastic result for the coachee. It may not be what you want to hear, but I think following up, I tend to follow up 2 or 3 times, until I hear back from the client. I don't pester them, but it's just gently offering out, if anything's changed, that's fine. You know where I am if you need me, or, like I said, here's the link to purchase. Being consistent in your follow-up, so deciding what your follow-up process is early on, can help to take away some of that anxiety around, oh, should I chase them? Should I not? Just design what is your standard process for follow-up, and make sure that you use that consistently each and every time you have a chemistry call with a client.
And what about if you're struggling to get traction on social media?
Oh, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because social media, for us anyway, and the types of businesses that we run, is a big part of our marketing strategy. It's the way we engage with our audience. It's the way that we get our message out there. It's how we launch programs. So social media does play a huge part in our business. However, what I've come to learn is it's not really about the interaction that you get with your posts that seems to make as much difference. Obviously, interaction is great, but you just never know who is watching and who is reading. I know that I have followed many, many coaches and never engaged on their posts because I don't want to, or the topic that they're perhaps writing about feels a little bit taboo to me. So I'm not going to put my name to it. I just want to learn from them. So there could be loads of reasons why you're not getting traction. So there's that. What else would you share about this?
I think maybe looking at how authentic you're showing up in that space, in terms of being able to connect with others. If you think about how we show up in real life, are you somebody that is normally very warm or relatively open? Are you conveying, and is that how you show up in your coaching sessions? And are you conveying that in your posts? Because it can feel very different when you're sat behind your laptop or your computer and you're typing something, as opposed to engaging in that personal way. Are you varying the content that you're putting up? So is everything, a sales post, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, versus giving a little bit of you, or explaining, showing some of the behind the scenes things, that kind of stuff. But also, how much do you know about your ideal client and what they want to see and hear from you? how do you get that information? And so you can do a bit of both, really, in that way. But I totally agree with you. So many of my coaching clients and those that book on our coaching courses will message me on LinkedIn, and I may not recall of them having engaged in my posts, but I've been watching you for ages. So be consistent, be prepared to adapt your strategy. So there is that balance between consistency and also the data. You need to get data. What are the posts that have got the most traction? And if they have got traction, have they resulted in additional business for you? Because they might have got loads of traction but not converted, or maybe they had both. So what's there? And then what about, let's take a different angle on this. What about if you have been working with a corporate client, they've been a really strong income stream for you, in many ways your business has been built around it, and then that contract lapses. So perhaps the person that engaged you has moved on to another organization, and the incoming person has got their own favorites that they want to bring in and work with the organization. Or maybe the work that you've been doing has been so successful that there isn't an ongoing need for it. So what would the advice be there?
Well, firstly, don't panic. This is actually a similar thing that happened in our business in the early days, wasn't it? We had one client and we had a lot of work with them. We hadn't invested time in building relationships with others. And over time, we saw that work coming to an end. So the important thing, as I said, is stay calm, take the learning, approach the organization for some glowing testimonials. If you've done fantastic work with them, ask them for recommendations. Like, who do they know, other organizations that may be looking for similar services, and can they make any introductions for you? So I think there's that. And then also look at your network, so where else do you have similar organizations or connections or contacts, and be proactive, like reach out to them, share some of the case study work that you've been doing if you have permission to from that organization, and really get to work on your marketing and get to work on your sales. And don't go again down the mindset rabbit hole of that, oh, I'm a failure, oh my gosh, my business has come to an end, and persevere. So I think that's some of the things I would say about that one. Anything you'd add?
I think it's really important to take the learning, and to have a strategy in place then, so that you don't find yourself in the same position again moving forwards. Because it is easy if you secure a big contract, a corporate contract for coaching, to get caught up in, obviously you want to do a great job. If it's your first corporate contract, all your energy and attention is focused on doing amazing work, and you're thrilled because you're doing work that you love, and it almost can give you an excuse to ignore the bits of the business, that you perhaps aren't so much of a thing that you enjoy. So you have to take the learning from that and apply it, as well as all of the things that you said there. And yes, we've experienced all of the things we've talked about so far. And what has set us apart in terms of our business is taking the learning from each of those. What about if you get sick?
Oh, yeah, this is quite a hard one, isn't it? Because many coaches are solo practitioners and solopreneurs. So what happens if you get sick? Well, the first thing is to rest, to honor your needs, to look after yourself, because showing up when you're sick to your clients doesn't look good. It doesn't look good from a role modeling perspective in terms of, how you honor your own well-being. And clients are often coming for permission to look after their own well-being as part of the coaching. So, but that obviously has to be balanced with the need to earn a living. So then I think it's similar to what you said before, and look at your strategy. How is your business built so that if you are sick or you become sick, that your income doesn't just dry up overnight, or you can't afford to take a week or two away to recuperate. And if you find that you have created a business that requires you to be on 24/7, then take the action today to change up the shape of that business, so that if something like this does happen, you're protected. And I would also say beyond that, look at what actual protection you have in your business around insurance policies and income protection and things like that. So you don't need to worry if the worst is to happen, that you literally have no business. So for many, many years, I had an income protection policy so that if I was to become sick, that would pay me an income, after a deferred period of time. So there are products and things on the market that can help to give you that reassurance. So obviously do your own research about that. I'm not here to give you financial advice, but just to know that there is protection out there for, small businesses so that continuity can continue. But absolutely returning to your sales and marketing strategy. And if you do find that you have to work through your sickness, then have a look at what is realistically possible. Like, don't continue to work and slog yourself, because you're not going to recover, and you're just going to extend the time that you aren't well for. What else would you add, Jo?
Well, I think there's a difference between, being sick for a day or a week and being sick for 3 months, or, having a very serious illness where you're not even sure if you're going to be able to, return to your work from that sickness. So I think they are different scenarios. Looking at your terms and conditions is important. So what does it say in the terms and conditions? So your client already would know what would happen, and you can signpost them to that if you need to. And also being upfront in your chemistry conversations, obviously around what would happen if your client was sick, what would happen if you were sick, as one of the reasons that might lead to either of you not being able to attend, so that you can maintain that relationship. And for example, are you going to refer somebody on? Will you give them a refund? Will they need to wait for you to return from that? Because if you are sick, you don't want to have to be worrying about your client base. You need to focus on your own well-being, but also you want to handle those situations in a way that enhances your reputation as an ethical and professional coach.
Yeah, and that reminds me around, whenever we've done work with corporates, around our terms and conditions, obviously we have each other. So we do talk about where we may substitute for each other. So you might want to think about your own network, like who are your support network? Do you have other coaches, perhaps, for facilitation or making sure that you can fulfill different commitments that you could bring in, that perhaps you would pay an associate fee to, so you can still take some of the income away, but making sure that you're also rewarding the person who's helping you out. And, we have a great community where there's lots of coaches. So we'd encourage you to come into the coaching crowd, and obviously the Coaching Crowd Business Lounge, where actually those relationships that you build with different practitioners are as much value as to the content that you get.
I think we've got a couple of others just to think about quickly. So one is that let's say your social media account gets shut down.
Oh, what a horror. Can you imagine losing the coaching crowd? So, I mean, firstly, you're going to have to mourn for it, because if it gets shut down and it's shut down permanently, then there's very little that you can do. But before you accept that that's permanent, obviously get on support, talk to probably bots in reality, but reach out to support and see what you can do. I think it's really important when you have social media accounts that you aren't the only administrator. Making sure that any accounts that you own have multiple people who can access those accounts, so that if it's just a case of it being closed by permission to your own account, you can access it in other ways. Now, if the whole account gets shut down and you lose everything, then it's back to the drawing board, isn't it? What have you learned? What could you do differently? And of course, not relying on those accounts in the first place, and by bringing people onto your email list, which is something that you own, is a big part of making sure you've got continuity there as well. Sorry, you were going to say something, Jo. I know I
was going to say that, obviously, because what you're thinking, I'm thinking as well. I was also thinking about how, we talk to you, our listeners, who are part of many of our other communities through the podcast. We have our book, we have our membership, we have our other social media accounts. So if one got shut down and we had to create a new one and chose to create a new one, then it would be easy for us to be able to communicate with our audience through those methods, as well as the email list. So it is something really important to think about if you are going to invest a lot of time in building a community like that. Yeah. And then shall we just take one last one for now? Maybe what about when your clients go AWOL?
Clients do go AWOL, don't they? And what would I say about this one? Well, first, you have to balance how much you choose to check in and chase with your client versus respecting space that they might need, and I think, again, it's easy in hindsight. Go back to your contracting in the first place and talk about what happens if your client goes AWOL. So for me, I tend to make a number of attempts, 2 or 3 attempts to reach my client over a period of a couple of months. And whatever last attempt I make it clear the ball's in your court. I'm here, reach out to me when you're ready to re-engage. And obviously that needs to come in line with your terms and conditions. So for some coaching packages, there's a time limit on how those sessions need to be used. So I'll bring that to the client's attention, ask them to reach out if they need an extension or further support. It's really about thinking about how do you want to work, and also relying on your contracting, your terms and conditions to make it workable for all parties. What would you add, Jo?
I think the first point is don't take it personally. Because if you take it personally, the risk is that the energy from that bleeds into other work that you do with other clients. So, seek support, seek reassurance, and also be open to feedback from the client. If the coaching relationship wasn't working out, be open-minded about learning about that, because that will give you information about how you might filter clients, change your messaging and so on. But also life happens for clients, and sometimes life changes in such a way that they either feel unable to continue with the coaching, or that they don't have time to invest in it at that time, and that's okay. That happens, and every coach will have an occasional client for whom that is the case. And I know I said that was the last one, but I was also thinking about when you get to the point in your business where you realize you need additional support, and you might start initially maybe by bringing in a VA. You might have engaged with freelancers, and what happens when they leave. So you've invested a lot of time in onboarding somebody into your business, and you've built a trusting relationship with them, and it was a big step for you to make in the first place. And then they decide they need to move on for any personal reason or career advancement. That can feel like a setback for you as the coach, because it may be the closest relationship that you have in your business. What would you say about that situation, Zoe?
Well, I think it's designing from the outset how you spend time on your business, and we've had these situations, haven't we, where actually we've been so busy working on the business that to hand over our business to somebody else, or even parts of our business, is actually quite complicated because it exists in our head rather than anywhere else. So I think where you can, building process maps, manuals of the how-to guides, asking your VA whenever you assign them like different tasks to do, that they capture that information somewhere around how they're doing it and the different things that are involved. So if that is to happen and there needs to be a handover, you have what you need in order to be able to do that seamlessly. This has turned into a bit of a bumper episode, this one, hasn't it? We should have maybe broken it down into a couple of podcasts, but taking our own advice, actually, what I would ask all of you that are listening, we have something like 8,000 listeners a month at the moment, maybe more than that. And our Instagram account needs a little bit of love. So actually, if you are listening to this, head on over to Instagram. We're at The Coaching Crowd, and come and follow us over there.
And if you're listening and thinking, they haven't covered a business setback that I have been thinking about might happen, and I'd like to know how to address it, or I'm in a situation right now, then feel free to either come and join our Coaching Crowd Business Lounge membership, or pop over into our Coaching Crowd group, and you can drop it in there, and us and the other community members, I'm sure, will come in there to be able to offer some other perspective and support to you. So I hope this has been a useful episode for you.
Yeah, and you can find details of the Coaching Crowd Business Lounge on our website, which is igcompany.co.uk/lounge.